So as predicted, the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro Max reviews are here, and I figured while I go ahead and watch them, why don't I watch them with you? And I'll give you my feedback and maybe break down some of these reviews and see if we can read between the lines and know if either one of these phones are gonna be good for you. Listen, I haven't really watched these videos yet either, so you're gonna see my real-time reactions to this. I have some kind of preconceived notions of what we're gonna see, but why don't we just go ahead and get into it? Right after this!
This is, you know you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis and I do tech videos every single week. And today we're going to be watching some iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max reviews. So let's get into the video. Now, most of the channels we're going to watch are people that I know personally or have maybe collaborated with in the past, and maybe one or two that I don't, but I'm really curious to see what each person says. Now, to be clear, Apple sent them these phones. So I think going into this, you should know that they're probably largely going to be positive reviews because Apple's not going to send them to people who are not going to give them some type of positive review. Having said that, I expect all of them to be honest. So whether they come out feeling positive about the phone, I think is kind of irrelevant. I think they're going to be honest about it. But yes, it was not sent to just anybody, just to people that Apple trusts. So first up is Rene Ritchie, a good friend of mine. I really appreciate the help he's given me along the way. Let's see what he has to say about these.
Superficially, the iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, iPhone 13 Pro, and iPhone 13 Pro Max are almost indistinguishable from their iPhone 12 counterparts. But
hopefully this will be the last year where that's the case, because to be honest, a lot of people will tell me that iPhones are boring and stuff because they look the same. So hopefully this is the last year we'll have to worry about that.
Once you start using them, the differences are considerable. Brighter displays, better cameras, especially on the Pro variants, huge improvements in battery life, especially for the mini, a novel cinematic video mode, double the storage for the baselines, and up to double the refresh rate for the Pros. I've been using all four variants for almost a week now, and this.
Whoa. This is the iPhone 13 Pro Max with the cinematic video. I mean, I know it's not going to look as good. Here's the thing about iPhones. The cinematic video here looks bad to me. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm looking at this. It's blurring his ears. It just doesn't look good. But indoor lighting is kind of hard to do well, even if you have good lighting inside. Like, it's just hard to do well on a smartphone. And if you don't look at the fact that he's using a really expensive camera before and after this, you might think, okay, it looks fine, but then watch.
Is my iPhone 13 review. And yes,
I mean, it's not going to be as good as this, but it's not supposed to be. But for me, it's looked really bad. Let me know in the comments below. Did you think that first cinematic video sample looked bad? Now, having said that, I actually have seen other people use cinematic video and it looks pretty good. Maybe I'll pull up the Jonathan Morrison example a little bit later, but let's watch more Rene.
We'll be doing a ton of nerdy deep dives throughout the week, so hit the subscribe button and bell so you don't miss any of.
It's just, I mean, the overall smoothing on the face and how much, it just to me doesn't look good. But what the most offensive thing is the fact that his ears are blurred out. I mean, I appreciate that Rene put it here with no commentary, just let you choose and decide what you think about this. But for me, I'm not impressed.
Last year, one of the biggest knocks on the entire iPhone 12 lineup was battery life, especially on the mini. So this year, that's one of the biggest areas Apple's focusing on for the iPhone 13 lineup. They've made the batteries bigger, which is always challenging because you have to balance for things like weight, thermals, and radio transparency, so you don't just end up with more battery to waste. Also, for the Pro models, there's a new adaptive refresh display, which I'll get into in 120 Hz minute.
So the battery, which is one of the biggest things that I'm interested in, and the refresh rate, which I know a lot of you are interested in seeing, does it feel any different to see an iPhone with 120 Hertz adaptive refresh rate? So these are the things I'm really going to be keying in on this review and see if we can figure out what's going on.
1.5 hours of battery life for the iPhone 13 mini and the iPhone 13 Pro, and 2.5 hours for the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 13 Pro Max, all with typical mixed real-world workloads. I'm getting about 2/3 of that right now, but I'm also doing way more than a typical workload because 24/7 testing for this review and Pokemon Go. But for most people, I imagine the improvement will be substantial.
See, this is one of the biggest complaints about the iPhone mini and the 12 version, is that the battery life wasn't really good. Everyone who bought it that I knew really enjoyed the actual size of it, although I saw it, I thought it was ridiculous. But they really hated the battery life. This might fix that. What Rene's saying here about the 2/3 comment that he made is essentially, He's not seeing exactly what Apple is promising, but if you know anything about Apple's promises on battery life, they've been usually pretty conservative. And if what Rene is saying is true, where he was just hammering it, which would make sense in order to make a video in a short amount of time, you pretty much have to. At the end of the day, I believe his claim that he thinks it's going to be a substantial increase for average users. I'm excited to find out what it is for me. I suspect the Pro Max, if it does anything like the 11 Pro Max, or if it does better than 11 Pro Max, we're talking a 2-day phone.
But if there is an M2 chip this year, it'll almost certainly be based on the A15. So if you're interested in either, make sure you hit that subscribe button for my deep dive.
Yeah, and hit the subscribe button on this channel too. Rene as well, but there's one here as well.
Providing enough headroom for Apple to continue to offer iOS.
That's the cool new feature where you can take a picture of something and then actually take the text out. But that's something you can do right now on your existing iPhones and iPads. It was an iOS 15 update. It wasn't necessarily just for iPhone 13s.
Bringing promotion adaptive refresh displays to the iPhone, like the iPads Pro have been doing for almost half a decade now. They can ramp up to 120 Hz for silky smooth scrolling and gaming, like high thread count silky smooth too, not the cheap stuff, but also ramp down to 60 Hz for TV and web videos, 48 Hz for movies the way nature and Hollywood intended, even all the way down to 10 Hz for static content like books and photos. Like the iPad Pro, the ProMotion implementation on the iPhone is so good, even with lighting changes, and especially with color management, I don't even really notice it. As far as I can tell, there's pretty much zero ramp up or ramp down curve.
Now, here's the weird thing. I sometimes forget that my iPad Pro has a 120 hertz adaptive display. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because when I recently had the Galaxy Z Fold 3, I could tell it had 120 hertz and it was glorious. Like, it was so smooth. But for some reason, I don't recognize it on my iPad Pro. Hopefully, when I get the iPhone, I will recognize it, because I feel like when you see that smoothness, it just feels more fluid and more, I don't know why I'm going to say this, but fun. So I hope that I don't not recognize it, which is almost what Rene said, but I really actually want to recognize that there's 120 hertz on my iPhone.
Smaller this year by surface area, mostly by just narrowing it down. And while the narrower notch does technically free up more pixels along the top, I haven't really seen anything that takes advantage of them yet. So as Thanos snappings go, it's symbolic for now.
So the smaller notch, as Rene is saying here, not a big deal, which I think the fact that the notch is not gone should not be a surprise. If the notch is still there, it doesn't matter that it's a little bit smaller, it's still going to be there, and you're still probably going to hate it if you hate it. And I'm not a big fan of it.
The bigger issue for me personally is that Face ID itself doesn't seem to have been improved after the last couple of nightmare hellscape years. And yes, I'm talking to you 2020 and 2020 Junior. I was also hoping to see Touch ID return. Not even under display, though that would be nifty, but just in the power button like the new iPad Air and Mini.
So that's been one of the biggest complaints, besides not always on display, is no more Touch ID. There are rumors that the upcoming iPhones in the next couple of years will have it. I don't know. For me, I get it. Like with the having a mask on, it won't kind of understand who you are with Face ID. However, if you have an Apple Watch, there are ways around that. Now, some of you I've said in my comments, you shouldn't have to pay to be able to get around that. I get it. But for right now, it is what it is. Expect no differences.
And that really makes me wish Apple had reevaluated the whole entire Lightning port situation this year. And I totally get that most mainstream customers have a ton of Lightning accessories. And if you try to make them change it, they'll cut you. But just the idea of moving all of that video, all of that ProRes, those gigs and gigs of 10-bit HDR ProRes video over Lightning or AirDrop fills me with deadline-destroying dread.
A freaking man. Listen, here's the thing. I've been talking about whether they should call the iPhone Pro a Pro phone for a long time. And if you don't know, the difference in speed between Lightning and USB-C is stark. I actually did a video about this a couple years ago when I had my iPad Pro and I had to move content over from that versus like a regular iPad. And it's like the level of, I think it took me 5 minutes to get a video off of my iPad Pro and 20 minutes to do it over Lightning on my iPad. ProRes would be a nightmare. So it's almost pointless to put it on an iPhone. That might be a controversial statement. It's cool that they can do it, but it's darn near pointless, because by the time you get that thing filled up with, well, remember, only 256 gigs and higher get the 4K ProRes. By the time you fill that up, you might as well plug that thing in and go home, because you ain't getting the data off before that. And by the way, if you're a consumer, you don't care about ProRes, so it doesn't matter.
As I've complained over and over again for the last few years and reviews, Zoom is just one of those few areas of traditional photography that Apple still hasn't really addressed. Not with a massive megapixel camera binned down for normal use or a dedicated periscope zoom for full-on creep mode. And I'd still love to see them go there eventually.
Now, my question here is how often are people going to use Zoom? And I don't really know the answer to that. I don't want to presume to think that I know the answer. My assumption is that it's not nearly used as much as your wide and your normal. I think most people are using those two camera lenses more often than not. And to his point, it's right. They haven't really addressed telephoto because I don't think they feel like they need to. My additional guess is they know how often the telephoto lens is being used, probably through data captured through the iPhone and maybe uploaded to Apple. And they just don't see the usage. But that might be a chicken and egg scenario because if the telephoto isn't anything special, you're probably not going to use it. So it's hard to know which is the right answer. Spend the time to make the telephoto more interesting because people want to use it, or don't bother because people aren't using it.
Cinematic video will latch on to the closest set of eyes it can, and if and when those turn away, it'll rack focus over the next closest set. And if the closer set turns back, it'll rack focus back.
So you notice it kind of lost the focus when it kind of went to the kids in the back. It did a really good job going from here to here, but after that, it kind of didn't know where to go. So I think you can only kind of rack focus really close up to kind of one step back, so to speak. I think trying to do it like this just doesn't work. It was a good little example here. But again, the quality inside is just okay. When you saw the presentation on Apple's presentation, it looked like a freaking movie. But again, I think this is indoor lighting, which is always a little bit harder. We'll have to see some outdoor samples.
So for anyone still on an iPhone 8 or 10 or earlier, even a 10s, the sum total of new and improved features across the iPhone 13 line, but especially for the Pro variants, will be compelling, just a huge upgrade.
Now, here's the thing. I actually did a video recently with a kind of tier with Greg from Greg's Gadgets. We talked about when you should upgrade to the iPhone 13. I'll leave a link for that in the description below and in the end screen. Let's go to the next creator. Next up is iJustine. I did a collab with her earlier this year. She's an incredible creator, old school, has been doing this for a long time. Really excited to see what she has to say. Now, of course, we know she loves Apple. She loves iPhone, so I think she's going to be kind of excited. Let's see what she says.
So one of the things that I'm so impressed with is macro mode, and this is exclusive to the 13 Pros. This will basically just auto switch into macro mode, and you can get about 2 centimeters away. Like, look at this color, look at this detail, and if you think that this is something that you could do before, you're absolutely wrong. Let me show you. So if I try to do this on my 12, yeah, that looks great. Really good content.
100% what I'm saying. She is not exaggerating. I've tried to do close-up pictures with my iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that's kind of what it looks like. That is one of the best so far examples I've seen of macro and like how much more impressive it is than the previous generation of iPhones. Like this alone shows the leap in the camera quality between the phones.
What's amazing is the fact that Apple has been able to kind of integrate all of these filmmaking techniques.
Now that looks so much better than what we just saw with Renee's video. Not a shot at Renee at all, but just that there are instances where this thing can look incredible. So we looked at the Renee shot and you're like, this is probably hyped up. The phone was never that good. Now you look at this shot and like, wow, this thing looks incredible.
Do you think A is the iPhone, or do you think B is the iPhone? I'll leave it up to you guys. Leave it in the comments below, and you can check Instagram and Twitter for the answer after this video is posted.
That's great. I love that she did this because if you look, it's kind of hard to tell. So the one thing I do notice in this picture is that this is slightly more defined. Your blur is there, and it is kind of just generally more blurry here, which to me indicates that this is somehow digitally done because a glass is not going to be able to kind of make parts of it sharp. You're gonna see more of a gradient here. So my guess is this is with her normal lens and this is with the iPhone, but they look tremendous. Again, outside pictures are going to look fantastic on this phone. Check iJustine's Twitter to see if I was right.
Pretty impressive. Also using AI, it will decide what should be in focus. This is a really cool demo that I did in Panera where I was talking to Jake super casually, not planned or scripted at all, and watch how awesome this is. It started focusing on me.
Now this is an indoor shot, but it looks like there's some natural light here, and I think it looks tremendously better than the shot that Renee took. So again, your lighting and the situation is going to have everything to do with how good the video looks coming out of this phone. So I'm starting to feel better about cinematic mode. Again, remember 1080p 30 only. I'm kind of sold. I mean, this thing looks really, really good. If she hadn't said that this is with the iPhone, I just would have assumed it was with the camera she was using all along. Like it's really impressive.
I did not realize there was cinematic front-facing camera.
What? Cinematic front?
No way! Oh my, I'm freaking out.
I didn't know that was there either. That's pretty dope.
The iPhone automatically already takes really great photos, but sometimes they do have a little bit more of an over-processed look. So with RAW, you can make them look however you want.
So along with ProRes, this is kind of for people that are really sticklers for their video and photography. I think for most people buying an iPhone, they're not going to care about RAW or ProRes, and certainly shouldn't even think about ProRes because you're going to be frustrated, like I said earlier, just trying to get off the phone. But it's always cool to have the feature, and if you're going to call it a Pro phone, I think this kind of makes sense. But man, the pictures that we're seeing so far, again, outside pictures are tremendous. Inside, Justine was able to find a couple of locations that still look absolutely phenomenal. So I'm feeling really excited about the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max picture taking.
Now let's see what it looks like if we do a digital zoom all the way into 3x on the Mini. So you'll be able to really see the difference.
Now here on a full screen, you can kind of see it. You can see that it's slightly less sharp here, and it's obviously a little bit digitized versus the optical zoom. But by and large, you know, if you were to put this in front of a lot of, you know, your average consumers, are going to look at this and go, it looks the same to me. I mean, you can see the difference, but by and large, a lot of people are going to say it looks about the same.
I just got a notification that said Justine's wallet was detached. My wallet was left near here.
What I love about Justine is that she's making this review fun. It's not just kind of a spec thing and a spec read. She's taking it out, she's using it, she's trying to find she's doing all types of fun stuff. I highly recommend you check out Justine's review, link in the description. Finally, Ben's gadget reviews. I don't actually know Ben. This was suggested to me on Twitter by Ben Geskin, so we're gonna do this. And apparently he shot this in the iPhone 13 Pro cinematic mode, so that's pretty dope. We'll take a look.
The video you're watching right now, you should be seeing a little bit of natural bokeh around me. It looks a little bit better than a smartphone video, right? Well, this is actually shot with the iPhone 13 Pro, and it is completely handheld right now. It's a little bit easier to tell the differences. So the 13 Pro Max and the 13 Pro that's filming right now are exactly the same, other than screen size and battery size. Likewise, the 13 Mini, it's exactly the same as the standard 13, other than screen size and battery size.
Now, this has actually been one of the questions I've got a lot from comment section. Should I get the Pro or Pro Max? They're the same thing. There's only two differences: screen size, battery size. That's it. Unlike previous years, where at least last year there was a slight difference in camera and some other little things, they're the same. They're the same phone, same processor. The only difference is the size, which of course also lends to a larger battery. So if you're interested in the Pro series of phones, all you gotta do is go and see which one fits in your hand better.
With an iPhone 13 Pro.
Now, this is a good looking shot. Again, outside, I think this phone is going to perform so well, even in cinematic mode. So I'm actually really excited to see more examples of this.
Zoom, optically stabilized. When you drop down to like 8x, it actually looks pretty clean.
That's really impressive considering that only the first 3x of that is the optical and the rest is digital. This is a clean looking picture, and the 15 times actually wasn't that bad either. So even though we're looking at a 3x optical zoom with a little bit of digital magic, the thing looks pretty darn good.
Phone videos, because smartphone videos tend to look a little bit flat compared to when you're shooting with a...
There's moments here where it looks a little fake. It's interesting. You'll see if you watch around her head, you can kind of see it blur in and out, and it looks a little kind of artificial. Keep an eye on this.
Real camera. And one of the coolest things is whatever the blur you see right now can be adjusted after the video. So after the video, I can dial it down a little bit, I can dial it up a little bit, or I can turn off the blur completely. There's two person in frame. If person A is in focus, but then person A turns.
That's still pretty magical. I mean, I can't talk about it. It's just amazing that it does that.
Back to person A.
And there it is, the cinematic mode again with a selfie camera, something that wasn't mentioned before. That's pretty dope.
Pro Max's battery life is actually pretty good because I've been using this phone for about 5 hours already and it only dropped 23% so far. But we'll begin tracking 77%, 637. Look how smooth the zoom is in and out.
There was a couple of quick steps. I don't know if you noticed. I think it's when it's changing the different lenses. But man, that zoom in general is really super smooth.
So night mode kicks in automatically for both phones.
You tell me in the comments below, which one looks better? There's different reasons for each. There's a little bit of a blowout here, but it's definitely much more defined. You can see his face is much clearer. He's darker here, which is probably more realistic, but it's kind of faded back. You'll notice back here, the image of the light is actually probably more realistic, where it's a little bit blown out here. And the sky is definitely easier to see here. You don't even like see this branch over here. I'm not sure. Oh, it looks like a slightly different angle here. But in general, I'll tell you, like, just looking at this, I favor the iPhone for the faces, but kind of the Galaxy for the background, if that makes sense.
Camera. You can argue the S21 Ultra has a better shot. It's a little bit punchier. It's a little bit better lit. Dynamic range, it pops a little bit more. But then when you switch to the ultra wide lens, you'll see that the S21 Ultra's colors completely changes from the main camera to the ultra wide camera.
And this is what I'm talking about. Apple's taking time to make sure that each lens is kind of balanced. Samsung, on the other hand, isn't. They're just taking each lens and kind of doing its own thing. They're all like in silos, so to speak. With an iPhone, you're just going to get, whatever the value is, the quality is going to be the same across all, which I appreciate, because at least you know what you're getting. If you're on an S21 Ultra and you're taking a normal shot and then go to ultra wide, you don't realize that the color, lighting, and everything else is going to be off. So I appreciate that about the iPhone.
Battery is at 70%. So that means in 1 hour of heavy use, remember I was filming this non-stop, the phone only dropped 7% battery. That is really good. If you watch my other day in the life videos, every time I use an Android with 120 Hz, like the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra, or like a S21 Ultra, in 1 hour heavy use, the battery drops like 15%, 12%. So the fact that this drops 7% is really damn good.
So there it is. This is the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is what I was looking forward to. The battery lives appear to be what Apple has promised, and I can't tell you how excited I am. Like I said a million times before, doesn't matter what features your phone has. If it's dead, it's no good. So the fact that this battery is still kicking at 11:30 p.m. at almost 50% with heavy usage, I'm kind of excited. Look, there's a bunch of other reviews out there online, but they basically say the same thing. The camera is amazing, the battery life is crazy, and it's still an iPhone. Like ultimately, it's an iPhone. If your expectations are that it's something else, then you're going to be disappointed. If your expectations are that it's going to be the best iPhone available, you're going to be excited. So at the end of the day, maybe you should grab one. If you're going to, let me know in the comments below which one are you going to get and which one did you like the best, the Mini, the Pro, the regular, or the Pro Max. I'll see you next time. Peace and love.